Toronto Union Station is one of the most significant stations in North America, and on February 26, 2023, we started the journey of a lifetime from the famous station. It started early in the morning on the cold winter day as we arrived to the station and checked out the Grand Hall. We would be checking in our mom to get her on her train back to Windsor before watching her depart on Via Rail train number 71. We took in the station before getting on the light rail to ride around and watch train 71 depart. With the sun rising and the CN Tower standing guard, we watched as Via Train 71 departs Toronto with a P42 leading a set of Bud cars. Our mom would be on this train and heading back to Windsor. After watching, we would head back to Union Station to start our journey. After watching 71 depart, we're back in the Grand Hall of Union Station. The clock stands as a centerpiece in the middle, and the Via Rail and Amtrak ticketing windows are to the right. After this, we would head into the sleeping car waiting area, where we would be able to get some snacks and light refreshments, as well as wait in some comfort before boarding our train. When boarding time comes, we will be ushered to our terminal and head up the stairs to see our train, Via Rail number 1, the Canadian. We got on board and quickly deposited our luggage into our berth. We then headed up to the park car to observe Toronto as we departed in the dome. Due to a fire in one of the Skyline cars, this would be the only dome on our trip to Vancouver. While not necessarily ideal, everyone became friendly enough where this was not an issue by the time we got through Ontario. In recent years, Via Rail and CN have both added almost 24 hours of padding time to the Canadian schedule. This means that the train now leaves Toronto at 10 in the morning instead of 10 at night. This is much different than the first time we took the train to Vancouver, where we left under the cover of darkness. This gave us a different perspective of Toronto as we departed in the dome car and were able to clearly see all of the beautiful buildings and the CN Tower in the city. The Canadian is the last streamlined train in North America, and truly a magical journey. The train was launched in 1955 by the Canadian Pacific Railroad as a route between Montreal, Toronto, and the West Coast in Vancouver. The train ran under the Canadian Pacific banner until Via Rail took over in 1978, and in 1990, the Canadian became the sole transportation service between Toronto and Vancouver. It changed to the Northerly Canadian National routing, but still retained the name the Canadian. The 70-year-old equipment that the train uses is loved by rail fans and the general public alike. It features dome cars like the park car we're riding in, classic dining cars, and classic sleeping cars. It's one of the last trains in North America where you can ride sectioned sleepers as well as full bedrooms and the prestigious Prestige class. Departing Toronto, our train included 13 cars. Unfortunately, included in this count was the buffer car behind the parked car. Rolling into the Ontario countryside, we would settle in the parked car and make light conversation with our new acquaintances. This portion of the trip served as a nice getting to know you and introduction for both the passengers and crew. My personal favorite place to spend time is the dome car, but we do have an entire consist to look through. Starting in one of the manor cars, we walk past the bathrooms as we enter the car. Next, we find the berth sections, which are done up for daytime use in this view. On the right-hand side is the shower room, and coming up on the left are the full-size bedrooms. Walking down the corridor, we have full-size windows on the right and the entries to the bedrooms on the left. Walking around this corner and coming back into the center of the car, we pass by the roomettes. These are like smaller individual bedrooms for single riders. We would next enter the vestibule, where we were greeted by some nice fresh Canadian snow. On the start of our trip, we dashed through plenty of snow going through Ontario. A few cars down, we find the dining car. As you enter the dining car, you walk down a narrow hallway where the kitchen's on your right and you have some windows on your left. Once you get to the end of the hallway, you enter the dining area. During this little walkthrough, a lunch service was being wrapped up. After the dining car was our Chateau Sleeper. This is serving as a prestige car and has 6 large bedrooms in it. This car has an updated interior, as can be seen in the corridor. The windows in the corridor are normal sized, but the windows in the bedrooms are enlarged. There are 6 total prestige rooms in this car. Exiting the chateau, we would enter Prince Albert Park, our park car for the trip. This car has been updated with an automatic door and contains 2 prestige rooms before the Mirror Lounge. As we round the corner and get into the corridor, we can see the Mirror Lounge, which is a bar area and great gathering spot. Right after the Mirror Lounge is the famous Bullet Lounge, which is an amazing place for conversation. As you enter the Bullet Lounge, you will find the stairs up to the dome cart immediately to the left. We will round this corner and head upstairs to get a look at the dome. The Bullet Lounge is set up for conversation. As you can see here, we were enjoying ourselves as the miles rolled away. On our ride on the Canadian, we would play games in the Bullet Lounge, have slideshows, and of course, a drink or two along the way. The Mirror Lounge was another amazing place to hang out. Here we had a game of Scrabble going on, which would eat away at the miles as we tried to decide who was the smartest. The weather on day one could not have been better. We enjoyed the Ontario scenery as we rolled north towards Hornpain, our first crew change of the day. At Hornpain, we stepped into the bitter cold for the first time. Here we would get a look at the head end of our train. Leading the way is Via Rail 6442, an F40PH-2D locomotive. Our train had 3 locomotives on the point for our trip west. At first it seemed overpowered, however by the end of our trip we would balloon to 18 cars. To wrap up the night, we would spend many hours in the dome car. Even after dark, this was an amazing place to spend time and just look out into the wilderness. In addition to the views, just because the sun went down did not mean the conversation nor good time stopped. On our way to turn in for the evening, we took a look at the nicely set up dining car. It's been prepared for breakfast service the following morning. The kitchen was quiet as well, nice and tidy and ready for breakfast. Walking down our manor car, we can get a sense for how the train was set up at night. Obviously, the main difference is it's dark outside, but most of the room doors are closed and the berths have been made down into beds. Here we take a look at the shared berths that my brother and I had. We had an upper and a lower, which are 2 of the cheapest sleeping accommodations on the train. That does not mean that they were bad. Our beds were both made up nicely, and we had plenty of space to spread out in the evening. Rising on day 2, we were greeted by a beautiful sunrise and a Canadian National Intermodal train. Day 2 is spent heavily navigating the northern shield of Ontario. Other than beautiful trees, and more trees, the only other interesting thing about today was getting put in the siding over and over again for freight trains.
It was an honor, actually. We sat there for the rush, and then after rush, we went under the MP at Kensington and sheared it off. The thing is, we were...
Sioux Lookout was our first fresh air stop of the day. It came late in the morning and allowed us to get out and stretch our legs in about 1.5 feet of Canadian white stuff. Departing Sioux Lookout, we would start one of the more beautiful stretches of Ontario. We would pass by hundreds of lakes, over many bridges, and through some of the tunnels on the route.
Normally it's darkness here. The last few years.
As the sun set, we enjoyed a nice dinner in the dining car. On day 2, we are definitely becoming acquainted with our new friends.
Some more B-roll footage for your YouTube channel.
We made our arrival into Winnipeg after dark. Winnipeg is an extended crew change spot where you can detrain for a couple hours and walk around the city. We would do just that with a group of friends from the train. We would end up walking to one of the Grand Hotels as well as a convenience store to pick up some snacks and pops for the next few days. Winnipeg would also be the first place that our train length increased. We would pick up a couple of the Churchill cars, which would join our train for the ride to Vancouver. With a couple hours of walking under our belts and nice seats in the dome car, we departed Winnipeg through the train shed. Shortly after departing Winnipeg, we would turn in for the night. On day 3 of our journey, we woke up and knew immediately we were in the Canadian prairie. We're inching along after meeting a freight train and enjoying the frozen tundra landscape. Since much of the Canadian prairie looks roughly the same, day 3 is a great day to play games, socialize, and really get to know the other passengers on the train. On this day, we ended up having an impromptu train slideshow in the parked car, played quite a bit of Scrabble, and enjoyed 3 really good meals with our now friends. into Edmonton just before midnight, we met our counterpart train number 2. This version of the Canadian is heading from Vancouver to Toronto. We noted when passing them that they did have their Skyline car, unlike us. The 4th day of the westbound trip is generally considered the most spectacular. As we woke up, we were preparing to enter Jasper National Park, the start of the Rocky Mountains. This is one of the amazing parts about riding the train westbound. All across Canada, it builds and builds and builds to the point when you can finally see the mountains. And at this time of year, they were all beautifully snow-capped.
I'm excited. It's like, I'm excited about the progress. I think for JD's walk around
That big blue flag? Oh, it's a parked car buffer. That's incredible. Arriving into Jasper, we can see the beautiful downtown as well as the many peaks surrounding the area. We would pass one of the Prince Rupert train sets, which has 2 parked cars on the rear, one of which for passengers and the other being used as a buffer car. In Jasper, our consist would grow even more as we would take basically a full Prince Rupert train set back to Vancouver with us. Now 18 cars long, our train is set up in a comical way, with 2 bullet lounges ahead of our normal consist. Sitting in the rear park car, the head end of our train was often out of view. The train sitting in Jasper was absolutely stunning. The engines sit at a point where you can see mountains in the backdrop. And of course, for the Rocky Mountains, we're back up in the park car dome. Because this is the only dome on the train, it would actually become standing room only for most of the trek through the Rockies. Even though it was cloudy on our way through the Rockies, the views were still stunning. We had many tunnels, many rivers, and many bridges to cross as we made our way west out of Jasper. The train doesn't slow down for much. However, Pyramid Falls is one thing it will slow down for. Pyramid Falls is a waterfall that is only accessible from the train. This time of year, it was completely frozen, leading to a beautiful pyramid-shaped ice sculpture. As we exited the Rockies, the lounges came alive. The drinks were flowing, as were the good times. Here we have a large game of Scrabble set up, where the hardest question of the day was, is it a word or not? Even though we're below the dome, the windows of the Mirror Lounge are still a beautiful spot to be.
One kind of bought in on this culture is we're trying to move away from a lot of these transit-specific boutique products that are made in very low volume and are very specific to the transit industry.
Our last stop of the day would be Kamloops, where we would get a crew change and a chance to walk the train. We would get another shot of the head end before walking the entire consist to the rear end. At this point in the trip, we were tracking for an early arrival into Vancouver. However, this would quickly change as night fell. Departing Kamloops, we would get stuck in the Thompson River Canyon behind a stalled freight train. While getting stuck behind a freight train does not sound ideal, in this case, it actually allowed us for a late arrival into Vancouver and a little bit of extra time on the train with our friends and for breakfast. All things considered, we actually considered this late arrival to be a win. The daylight arrival also allowed us to cross the Fraser River during light. Unbeknownst to us, there was major construction going on near our bridge, but we still got to look at the classic bridge as we crossed. The Fraser River Bridge is one of the signs that you are truly entering Vancouver. After the bridge, it is all slow going to Pacific Central Station. As we approached Vancouver, the skyline became more visible, and we started to make our final approach into Pacific Central Station. At this station, we would back in, which means we would actually have basically the closest view to the station from the dome car. Backing into Pacific Central Station, we get a look at the train shed as well as some of the Canadian equipment that is laid over here in the winter. We were, of course, the last in the park car dome and wanted to take one more look. All of the people we met on this trip were truly amazing. We made many friends, some of which have become lifelong friends. Thank you to everyone who was on this trip with us and made this as memorable as it was. This was truly the trip of a lifetime and one that I will never forget. If you made it this far into my trip report, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and remember, next time, take the train.